Men, thank you for joining me on Friday for lunch. It was incredible. For those of you that were not able to come, I want to share with you what Gabe mentioned. Gabe mentioned that he used to serve with Pastor Savin in the youth many years ago, and he personally has eyewitnessed many of the youth walk away from their faith. Many. And children that grew up in Christian homes in our church just totally walk away from their faith. He's witnessed many. So this has been burning on my heart for a while, guys. And I really feel like if we want different results, we got to do different things. We need to think outside the box. Let's think outside the box, guys. So let's get together and chit-chat. I also want to share with you guys what happened to me a year ago. A year ago, I was talking to a father in our home, in our church. He's a guy about my age. He's got children around my age. I was sharing with him my concerns and sharing with him my ideas. And he's like, Jamie, that's a big waste of time. He said, I grew up in public school. I went to college, and I'm doing just fine. I'm serving the Lord. Well, I'm going to tell you guys what I told him. The world that we live in, that we lived in, that we grew up in, is far different than the world our kids are growing up in. And soon they're going to be exiting the protection of our home, and soon they're going to be entered into that world. It's a crazy world. So I want to show you guys what that world looks like. I took a few clips of what's happening in our world right now. And I'm going to show you these clips, all right? There's a lot out there. I'm just going to show you a little bit. So anyway, watch this, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, Professor Richard Dawkins.
One of the most prolific thinkers of his generation, he shot to fame in the 1970s with his research into genetics. And his book, The Selfish Gene, transformed evolutionary biology. His most famous work, The God Delusion, sold millions of copies and has been translated into more than 30 languages.
You say in The God Delusion, one of my favorite sentences that jumps out of the page, that the God of the Old Testament is a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capricious, malevolent bully. As a piece of rhetoric, superb. But do you really believe that?
Congratulations on getting megalomaniacal right, by the way. Most people fumble on that. Yes, if you've actually read the Old Testament, I think you would have to agree. It's hideous. It's an the God of the Old Testament who is a monster.
And there's a whole galaxy, it's about 1 billion light years away. And here's an object that's just as bright as the whole center of the galaxy. You'd think it's a star that's near in our galaxy that just got caught in the picture frame. It's not. It's a star on the edge of that galaxy that has exploded. Every atom in your body came from a star that exploded. And the atoms in your left hand probably came from a different star than your right hand. It really is the most poetic thing I know about physics. You are all stardust. You couldn't be here if stars hadn't exploded, because the elements, the carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, iron, all the things that matter for evolution weren't created at the beginning of time. They're created in the nuclear furnaces of stars, and the only way they can get into your body is if the stars were kind enough to explode. So forget Jesus. The stars died so that you could be here today. Okay? And anyway.
That's very kind. Thank you very much. I'm trying to raise consciousness. I'm not trying to change the law. I'm trying to say, when you hear a child labeled as a Christian child simply because its parents are Christian, then that is child abuse. When you hear a child labeled as a Christian child simply because its parents are Christian, then that is child abuse.
First, he is the Emmy winner and CEO of the Planetary Society, who recently defended evolution in a debate at the Creation Museum with Ken Ham. The highly evolved Bill Nye, the science guy, is... You're a hero, Bill. But listen, here's the thing. 46% of Americans believe the story of Genesis is true. So I just
it's
want...
amazing.
I know. I'm just saying, I watched this documentary that HBO had this week questioning Darwin, and I heard these creationists, they had a lot of creationists, and one of them said, well, when you talk about things that crawled out of the ocean and evolved into people, it just doesn't make sense to me.
But my concern is for the students, that are brought up with this, and then they're taught that, oh yes, people are going to oppose you. As you grow up in life, people are going to think that your views are wrong and unsupportable, and of course you are wrong and unsupportable. But
you could say that out loud, Bill. You know what does hurt us? People who don't think climate change is real.
Oh, man.
And these two issues are getting coupled together.
Yeah, they are.
They're getting coupled together. It's like, the eggheads on the coasts, they believe in evolution and, of course, global warming. So you've got to teach them when they're young. You've got to get those basic fundamental scientific
This is my worship words. This is my worship words. This is my worship words.
Jordan Woolley. You have 5 minutes to speak to us.
Today I was given an assignment in school that questioned my faith and told me that God was not real. We were asked to take a poll to say whether God is fact, opinion, or a myth. And she told anyone who said that a fact or opinion was wrong and that God is only a myth. I tried to argue, she told me to prove it, and I tried to reference things such as the Bible and stories that I've read before from people that have died and went to heaven but have come back and told their stories. And she told me that both were just things that people were doing to get attention. Another child in my class had asked the teacher if we could try to put what we believe in on the paper, and she said you can if you want to get the problem wrong, which will fail. You'll fail the paper if you do.
It amazes me that people have pre-existing notions that defy the evidence of reality, but that they hold on to them so dearly. And one of them is the notion of creationism. If you think about that, somehow saying that, well, anything goes, we shouldn't offend religious beliefs by requiring kids to understand reality. That's child abuse. Now you might say, look, a lot of people believe that, so don't we owe it to them to allow their views to be present in school? Well, as I've often said, the purpose of education is not to validate ignorance, but to overcome it.
In Winter Haven, Florida, a Christian student at Polk State College claims a professor gave her a failing grade because she wouldn't criticize her faith. Humanities professor Lance L.J. Russum allegedly assigned students to write papers forcing them to deny the existence of God and agree that Christianity oppresses women. When the student wrote papers contesting the professor's point of view, she was given a failing grade on those assignments. Caleb Bonham is editor-in-chief of CampusReform.org, a watchdog group that exposes bias and abuse on college campuses. He joins us now from our D.C. bureau. Caleb, give us some background on the professor and why he failed this Christian student.
Yeah, the professor, L.J. Russum, he is a self-proclaimed atheist, Marxist, feminist professor who teaches this humanities course in Florida. And he assigned to his students 15 essays for the class. And in the case of these 4 essays, he required that students sort of argue anti-Christian perspectives regarding a variety of different topics. And so when the young girl, a 16-year-old, we're talking about a advanced placed student, said, no, I'm going to stand up for my faith. I'm going to stand up for my belief in Jesus Christ, and instead argue against this leftist professor, he failed her on 4 class assignments, giving her a 0 on all of those essays.
You probably know Bill Nye best as TV's science guy, but more recently he's turned his attention to debunking ideas of creationism. It's all laid out in his new book, Undeniable: Evolution and the Science of Creation. And Bill Nye joins us now via Skype from Los Angeles, California. It's great to have you back. How appropriate do you think it is to teach creationism to children?
It's completely inappropriate in science class. Now, if you want to teach it in the history of religion or fascinating human undertakings, creation myths that turned out not to be true, 101, then that's fine. But it's not science. It's nothing to do with the way we know nature.
Here again, another quote from your book. Inherent in the rejection of evolution is the idea that your curiosity about the world is misplaced and your common sense is wrong. This attack on reason is an attack on all of us. What do you mean by it's an attack on all of us?
When you are attacking our science or our ancestors who made these discoveries about nature, you are, for me, attacking all of us who embrace it and use it and want to make the world better.
So are you urging people to give up on the idea of creationism?
Oh yeah, please. Now keep in mind that if you're a grown-up, if you're an adult, and you've been raised with this creationist point of view, it's very, very difficult for you to let go of that. But for kids, they grow up with this conflict. Everything they see in nature, all the cool video games they enjoy, the cars they ride around, and they're a result of science. And yet they will have grown-ups, adults, insisting that the fundamental way we learned all that is wrong. And it's the kids that concern me, because when it comes to climate change, for example, we need all the brains we can get to address this problem. So if we raise a generation of science students that doesn't believe in science, it's a formula for disaster. When I was a kid, there were 3 billion people in the world. I remember when it changed, it was big news. It changed from 2.99999 to 3 billion people in the world. Now there's 7.2 billion people. In my lifetime, it is substantially more than doubled. And that's the problem. The atmosphere is extraordinarily thin as viewed from space, and there's 7 billion people burning it and breathing it, and that's why we're changing the climate. The Pope, 3 weeks ago, a month ago, came out saying, evolution's this great thing. It's completely consistent with our church philosophy and what we believe in, and so that's the Catholic Church doesn't have this issue, at least as far as I can tell.
History shows that the Catholic Church's relationship with science has often been a turbulent one. Now does not appear to be one of those troubled times, as Pope Francis recently declared that theories including the Big Bang and evolution support the creation beliefs of the Church. In his words, when we read about creation in Genesis, we run the risk of imagining God was a magician with a magic wand able to do everything. But that is not so. He created beings and let them develop according to the internal laws that he gave to each one so they would reach their fulfillment. Evolution, according to Pope Francis, is in perfect alignment with that plan because it requires the creation of beings that evolve. He's not the first Catholic leader to welcome such science into the Church's ideology. Before him, both Popes Pius XII and John Paul II made room in the religion for the acceptance of evolution.
My name is Jim Strayer. I'm from Michigan. I started my educational career in a small Methodist school. There is not a school in the United States that does scientific research that accepts creationism. Not one major college or university in the United States accepts creationism or intelligent design. Matter of fact, let me say it a different way. I really checked, I really looked, and I couldn't find a major college or university in the world that accepted creation or intelligent design. This creationist book, for my closing, there's a section in here, 342, that says scientific truths revealed in the Bible. Many important scientific truths were revealed in the Bible thousands of years before they were discovered by modern scientists. And then it lists several of them. It says in here, do not worry about the future because God is going to kill all of us. Soon, they say almost word for word. What they said in there is, do not give your life for evolution do not give your life for environment because the environment will be destroyed by the Lord, Well, if you believe that, then I guess you don't need to worry about the ecology. I guess you don't need to worry about the environment. But I don't believe that. And I think that we should worry about the environment. I think we should worry about the future of our kids.
Men, listen, the government for decades have been pumping billions of dollars into the public school system and in colleges promoting evolution. Listen, they've been doing it because of climate change. Now, when we meet on Friday, let's talk about this. So if you can't meet this Friday, let's meet a Friday, all right? Now remember, we only have one chance to raise these kids, right? So let's get together, all right, guys? This Friday. Thank you.